Well, we'll get started if everybody's ready. A little light on the press today, but they'll wish they'd been here once they hear the remarks, and we will circulate them. And as I said to the group, it probably means the questions will be a little more manageable. So with that said, we have some folks here who've made a long drive. I just run through the introductions real quickly. We have Josh from the Founding Freedoms Law Center, and these moms from Liberty.
Moms for Liberty.
Moms for Liberty. Thanks for coming. Mm-hmm. And another friend from back home, Suzanne Satterfield, who's very active in this effort to bring about justice for some of these children who are being adversely affected. We thank you for making the drive. Mm-hmm. And my fellow delegate, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Delegate Tara Duran.
Yeah, and then Sage's mom, Michelle, thanks for coming again. And Jess Smith. Jess has made the trip down from Loudoun County. She has been drawn into this effort that we're making. Well, she's inserted herself into it because of her solidarity with Michelle and Sage and the things that we're trying to accomplish. From Loudoun County, her daughter was put through a very difficult situation. We'll let Jess explain some of the details about that. And then Laura Hanford is what we'll call the architect of Sage's Law, who, working with Josh, has put this together and helped us refine it along the way. So the order we'll be speaking is, I'm just going to do a brief summary of what we sent out in our press advisory here. We want to clarify the purpose of the amendments that have been proposed, convey solidarity. Jess is going to talk about that between the Smiths and Sages in our cause. Laura is going to counter some of the false claims that were presented in the recent press conference put on by Equality Virginia. I attended that, sitting in the front row, and it was very, very misleading, mischaracterized Sage's Law, and Laura will also talk about some of the, I think, very compelling examples of how the medical practices that are currently being employed now are wrong, and that the scientific evidence and the parental rights side of this is very much on the side of passing this bill. And then I will contrast Sage's Law to the proposal put forward by Delegate Guzman a couple times that wants to criminalize parents for not going along with an early transition, and then also just make a prediction as to how this might impact the upcoming election. So with that said, I'd like to go to Michelle, if you lead us off and just kind of give us your impression of what's going on with you and Sage as the bill works its way through the process.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming down.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Blair, and I'm Sage's mom. I want to ask for your support for Sage's Law so other families don't go through the nightmare we experienced. You may know by now who Sage is from my prior testimony in the House and from the articles about her. But I will summarize it briefly because I want to remind every senator why this law is before you today. No child should ever have to go through what Sage did, and you have the power to change the politics and the policies that lead to her ordeal. No parent should ever have to go through the agony of knowing their child is suffering horrific abuse, and it could have been prevented with a little bit of political courage. When Sage started Appomattox High School at 14 years old in August of 2021, she told the school that she was identifying as a boy and asked the school to conceal that from us, her parents. So the school did, and used male pronouns and a new name, and told her to use the boys' bathroom. The counselor also gave her transgender websites to go on and meet trans friends. And they kept it all a secret from me, even though I had informed the school of the serious history of mental health issues Sage had, that she was under treatment, and that she had been hospitalized just that summer. The school still participated in a lie that had a domino effect, because lies do that. We were not informed about the bullying, the rape threats. Sage ran away. She was terrified. The night she told me, she was in tears that she'd been assaulted by a group of boys in the boys' bathroom. She ran away right into the hands of an online predator. She was abducted from Virginia, gang raped, drugged, taken by sex traffickers to Maryland for 9 days of abuse while the FBI found her. But things got worse. When we rushed to Baltimore to bring her home, Judge Kershaw kept her from us for 71 days, almost 3 months. They placed her in jail and then a boys' home. Well, an attorney, Anissa Khan, tried to build a case to prove that we were abusing her based on misgendering, which was terribly ironic since the school had deceived us about her claim to be trans. We didn't even know it to be true because it all came out the night she ran. Judge Kershaw put Sage, a victim of horrific sexual abuse, in the male quarters of a state children's home. And she told me later the boys continued to harass and assault her. Sage later told me that Anissa Khan had told her to lie that we abused her. She told her that she didn't care how many lies, as long as they won her case. Khan told my traumatized 14-year-old daughter that she would win this case even if she had to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Sage was exposed to street drugs, but Khan told her she didn't care about the drugs, just about winning the case. And to add cruelty to cruelty, Sage told me later not one of my letters reached her. Khan told her that since she was trans, I didn't even want her anymore. My heart broke. Sage ran away again, this time for Maryland, and away from the stress of all the court hearings. She ran again into the hands of another predator that she had met online. Another predator pretending he was her friend. Sage disappeared for months this time. She was drugged, she was beaten, she was locked up, she was raped, sexually exploited, and finally the marshals rescued her in Texas. Nothing short of a miracle. She was able to return with me, but the ordeal didn't end then, because she had to go to the treatment center that Judge Kershaw ordered her into, because it would affirm her as a male. Doctors began to pressure her to transition medically and suggested she have her breasts removed. Almost 6 months later, on one of my weekly visits with Sage, she told me she wanted to be a girl again. She wanted to be Sage, but she had made me promise I would not tell the doctors. It was too much on her trying to counter their disapproval. That was it for this mom. I started reaching out to every attorney in the phone book again, until attorney Josh Hetzler from Founding Freedom Law Center helped me get her released. And then attorney Ryan Heath of the Gavel Project helped me move forward without fear of anyone ever taking her away from me again. Today, Sage looks back on that year and she tells me she doesn't know who she was. She was never a boy, she just wanted to have friends. So that is why we need Sage's Law. Deceit by the school and the ideological actions by the court led my daughters unspeakable suffering because adults who should have protected her saw only gender. She was ripped away from us and horrifically abused. They refused me visits, phone calls, and mail, even on her birthday. Deplorable. And Sage is not alone. Families all over this state and country have been torn apart by schools and courts that, unlike parents, do not have a child's best interest at heart, but are driven by ideology. Sage's Law is as basic and common sense as it gets. Parents need to know what is going on with their own child at schools. And parents, we have the right to raise our children because we know them, and love them more than any teacher or counselor ever could. To suggest otherwise is just not true. I am appalled that every Democrat in the House voted last week against protecting other children from what Sage went through. And let me tell you, Sage watched it. She watched both of those floor votes with me. And do you know what she said? She said when she saw Delegate Danica Rome claim that this bill would not hurt trans kids, she said, Nana, that's wrong. Why is she saying that? It's not true. It's hard for a kid who went through a year of claiming to be trans, then blindly trusting every professional adult, watching these adults crush and exploit her, to watch adults lie about what happens to kids just like her. It's heart-wrenching. I would have traded places with my daughter at any moment during the torture that she survived. It's hard for me to explain how anyone could possibly make this partisan when it's a bill about letting parents of all beliefs and all backgrounds just be able to protect our children. Sage knows and I know that thousands of kids were being destroyed by schools, keeping secrets, and judges abusing their power to come between parents and children. Children, please let me remind you that these are children. Sage was worried about how close that final House vote was, but when it passed, she was in awe. She was thrilled. She realized that we were a step closer to protecting kids all over Virginia. She found it comforting to know that what she endured may not be in vain. You can't fix what happened to Sage, but you can help prevent it from happening to other children. For 344 days, no one cared and no one listened. But now, I have new friends all over the state and all over the country rooting for the Senate to tell Sage that her courage mattered. Please don't fail her and the thousands of vulnerable kids just like her. Help us help our children. So to every senator, this is my plea. Please show a fraction of the courage that my precious daughter has shown in sharing her story, and please pass Sage's law. Thank you.
I don't think we usually do applaud in press conferences, but when I hear Michelle's story and her encouraging words, it makes me want to applaud her and Sage. And I'll just add to that, when I hear Sage's name over and over again, but I hear that she was listening to this bill, it personalizes it for me. This is a girl that was in her early teens when all this began, and it's just unimaginable to think that a child in Virginia would endure what Sage has endured without having a unanimous and excited and enthusiastic effort among everyone in the legislature to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Another parent who has been put through a similar trauma is Jessica Smith. She and her husband, Scott, who wanted to be here with us but wasn't able to make the trip, will just tell us why they have chosen to engage with Michelle and Sage to help pass this law. And Jessica, if you could do that for us now, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jessica Smith, and I'm here to stand with Michelle and urge the Senate to pass Sage's law so that her nightmare doesn't happen to any other child. It's crazy that we even have to pass a law to tell schools not to lie to the parents, and that parents can raise their own kids. But here we are. Scott and I trusted our school. We believed they cared about our daughter. But instead, they were a bigger part of a secretive plan that had harmed our daughter. Just like Sage, my daughter was assaulted in a school bathroom. And the Loudoun system lied about that crime against my daughter because they cared more about passing a transgender policy than looking out for our daughter. They knew if the truth came out that parents would be up in arms. So they lied, and they called parents like us domestic terrorists for being upset about and wanting to protect others. In Sage's case, the school kept her parents in the dark about treating her like a boy, and the school told Sage, a young, innocent girl, she could use the boys' bathroom. Of all the stupid and dangerous things, Sage's school could have included her parents, who knew the big picture of their child's mental health and what might lead to a breaking point. But just like Loudoun County, the school was more loyal to a blind approval by Governor Northam's policies of deceit that hurt our children. It breaks my heart knowing this young girl was assaulted and terrified and ran away. The school messed up, and poor Sage was dragged through the worst kind of nightmare by sexual predators. Then a judge and attorney put Sage in harm's way. They were caught up in thinking the government can push parents out and take over if they decide parents don't fit the right ideology. They put her in boys' housing where she was assaulted again. And then she ran away and was caught again in sex trafficking. And that court had the gall to call her parents the abusers. The truth is, schools were the abusers for keeping secrets that led to Sage's ordeal. This is just evil. Loudon and Appomattox schools are now famous for two things: deceiving parents and sexual assault. Do we have to add more schools or more counties? How many kids have to be hurt in Virginia schools before politicians wake up and say enough? When are you going to stop the insane policy of lying to parents, driving a wedge between them and their children, and pretending that's in their best interest? I have news for you. Lying to parents is always going to harm their children. Enough already. Scott and I are disgusted that every Democrat in the House turned their back on Sage and Michelle and voted to let that keep on happening. It's up to the Senate now to do the right thing and protect our kids. And let me tell you, since every one of you is up for election, parents never forget the harm done to their kids. The radicals want you to vote for schools to keep secrets from parents and for courts to take their kids away just for raising girls as girls and boys as boys. I can promise you that voters want exactly the opposite. Sage's law is basic as it gets. Let parents protect and raise their own kids. If that's a bridge too far for you, you have no business representing families in this government. My husband Scott and I have decided we will travel and speak out as much as it takes to fix this. So it doesn't get fixed. You just might see us in your district. So protect our kids or protect the lies, your choice. But don't forget, we have a choice in November too. And you better believe we never forget. So do the right thing and protect Virginia kids. Pass Sage's law. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. And Suzanne Satterfield is going to speak next. She has worked tirelessly with different people who are the tip of the spear in this movement to protect children. And we've asked her to share some of the highlights of what she's experienced and what she's learning and the progress that they're making. Suzanne?
Thank you. Thank you. Parents have the legal right to make decisions regarding fundamental matters for their children's education, religion, and all medical treatments. Parents have the right to sue anyone that violates their parental rights. The school counselor's role is to help students achieve their academic goals with parents' involvement. They do not hold a medical license. The teacher's role is to teach the curriculum and communicate to parents any learning roadblocks their child may encounter and work with them to find solutions. They do not hold a medical license. In recent years, the school system empowered themselves to take the place of parents, as well as licensed doctors and therapists. They engage with students without their parents' knowledge and keep secrets from them. These practices have put children in harm's way that may send them down the path of no return. We are seeing proof of this across the country. Imagine being the Perezes and finding out your 12-year-old daughter, school hid a suicide attempt from you. She tried to hang herself at school, not once, but twice. She was being secretly transitioned by her school counselor that gave her a boy's name. Other students started bullying her, and she wanted it all to end. Amber came across an undergarment in her 13-year-old daughter's room that she had not purchased. It was a tank top that had a built-in bra and had an unbearable foul smell. She approached her daughter and she eventually admitted it was a medical device known as a chest binder. Her school social worker, who is not a licensed medical doctor, gave it to her. He told her, "Don't tell your mother." Amber went on to find out that her daughter was being socially transitioned by school personnel, and they were referring to her by a male name and male pronouns. Gabrielle Clark's young teen daughter engaged in self-harm, destructive behavior, hypersexuality, and anxiety, all under the school's watch while keeping it from her. It wasn't until her daughter's principal called her a boy's name in front of her that she became aware. With her mother as sole conservator of her mental and physical health, her daughter is on a healthy path to recovery. We know you would never let an unlicensed individual take charge over your child's health, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Nor would you tell your child that it's acceptable to engage in secrets with an adult outside of their home. It's time to put an end to the school staff practicing without a medical license and end the secrets. Vote yes for Sage's Law.
Good morning. We all know that parents are the primary caregivers, the primary educators, the people who love and understand and know their children more than anyone possibly could. We know what happens when parents are intentionally kept in the dark, and we've seen the wedge when parents and students grow, the wedge between parents and students grow when schools pick and choose when to notify families. There are those who believe that this is compassionate. They may call it gender-affirming care, critical to the well-being of their child. But in truth, it is an attack on the fundamental role of parents, a promotion of the misguided notion that parents are the enemy, that teachers and counselors know what is best for the safety of our students. It is a very strange time, indeed, when parental rights are so grossly under attack. When parents are being asked to step aside, to sit down, and to defer to counselors and teachers instead of those who know and love their children. As a former teacher, I fully understand the positive impact that teachers, administrators, and counselors can have on our students' academic and emotional development. But these relationships are diminished, and students are worse off when parental involvement is undermined. In the tragic case of what happened to a girl like Sage, a child who, by the way, had the most loving and supportive of parents, the deceit and division promulgated by school administrators is something we should all be able to condemn and work to ensure it can never happen again in the Commonwealth. Gender affirmation that places a young girl in a male group home to be sexually assaulted is not compassionate. Gender affirmation that pushes vulnerable, impressionable, and emotionally undeveloped children toward irreversible experimental treatments such as mastectomy, even chemical castration, is the farthest thing from compassion. It is abuse. Virginia can be a leader in the national effort to restore rights of parents and bridge the divide between schools, students, and their families. It is our responsibility to protect the fundamental rights of parents and protect our children from the dangers of radical gender ideology. I pray the members of the General Assembly can put ideology aside and do the right thing by children like Sage and by parents across the Commonwealth whose only concern is the safety, the success, and the well-being of their child. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Durant. I've asked Laura Hanford to address some of the remarks that were made in the Equality Virginia press conference that mischaracterized Sage's Law very, very wildly, and also to just kind of recap some of the information, the opinions, the expertise that in the medical community that fully supports Sage's Law Laura is the, what I call, with a little bit of a grin, the chief architect of this bill, working with Josh, has done a lot of the legwork to make this a national news story. And so Laura, would you again cover those couple subjects, the discrepancies and the medical opinions? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to hit really quick on a few of the main points that were raised both on the House floor by Delegate Danica Rome and at the press conference by Equality Virginia and Senator Hashmi and Delegate Danica Rome. And I find it ironic that Delegate Dave Rock came here and sat in the front row to hear what they had to say, but they are conspicuously absent today. And that is a theme, which is that there is a willful blindness to hearing the facts and to taking on board the science, the legal basis, and the medical best practices having to do with treating vulnerable transgender kids. First, I want to address the fact that SAGE's law addresses precisely the community it's about. It's not about transgender adults, it's about kids. And we know from all the science that most children who experience gender dysphoria grow out of it unless they are prematurely affirmed in that and socially transitioned. They are not the same as transgender adults, and we harm them when we treat them that way. Delegate Rome had the opportunity to make her choice as an adult. It is not hers or any other adult's place to make that choice for a vulnerable minor, the child of someone else. I'd like to address also the claim that SAGE's law will suddenly cause an epidemic of homelessness. This is a wildly inflated and false claim. We do not, in fact, have evidence. We've been digging into the data with Child Protective Services. We're going to continue doing that because this is important to address. If there are children that are genuinely in situations of abuse, we already have laws in place to report that and to take care of that. But we do not have data at all supporting this claim. What we do have data about, many documented cases across the US, is that kids are being told by schools, by groups that are supposedly trans-friendly, that they are at risk at home, that school is a safe place, but that your family might not be. And that is, my friends, the first rule of what a predator does. They say, oh, don't tell your parents. And you're safe with me, but not your parents. And I realize some of this may be well-intentioned, but that is precisely what has happened from California to Maine to Florida to Virginia. Kids are being encouraged that if they run away to a friendly glitter family, they will be safe. And nothing could be farther from the truth. That did not work out for SAGE. Once kids run away, they are exponentially at risk of sex trafficking, of abuse. Foster care doesn't solve the problem, so we need to be clear about what the facts are here. Kids are being encouraged to run away. They are not being thrown out by loving families like SAGE's family. Secondly, really quickly, the claims of suicide. This is one of the most reckless and dangerous claims that is put out by trans radical activists, because in fact, the evidence shows that kids are not, there's no connection between lowered suicide rates and gender affirmation or social transition. In fact, the more we gather evidence, the more we look over the evidence we have, the more we know that sometimes the opposite is true. The most recent New England Journal of Medicine study that had gender affirming care as its primary component had 2 suicides. But you're not going to read about that because it just got glossed over as a footnote practically. Secondly, the Tavistock Clinic, which got shut down in England, they compared kids who were waiting for suicide, who were waiting for gender affirming care, and kids who were receiving gender affirming care. There was no difference between both cohorts. This is evidence. This is not inflated claims. These are not surveys by activist groups. These are the actual points of evidence. And the biggest points that I would refer you to are 2 recent comprehensive studies. The first is by Dr. Erica Anderson, who has 40 years of clinical experience with gender dysphoric patients. Dr. Erica Anderson is transgender herself. She was on the board of the international group that sets standards for transgender healthcare, and she headed up the US group that sets transgender healthcare. And she feels so strongly that parents should be involved and notified and part of the process with their minor children that she wrote a 36-page amicus brief that was filed just down the street here in circuit court on behalf of parents in schools. So let me repeat that. The person, one of the doctors who was the leading expert on transgender healthcare, filed an amicus brief on behalf of parents because she felt so strongly that they needed to be involved for the best interests of the child and the mental health of the child in their care. And I would also refer you to the expose this week that just came out by Jamie Reed, a courageous whistleblower at a gender clinic in Missouri who is herself queer, married to a trans man, and has children. And for 4 years she worked in a gender clinic and she saw the kids coming in and the care they received. And what was the common thread again? Deceit and collusion between schools and doctors that were deceiving parents. And those kids were harmed in unspeakable ways by medication that they just were put on immediately by the doctors. I would refer you to that because it shows clearly and based on actual cases of children harmed in real time, in real life, by this medicine, that parents must be involved. So pulling back, the common thread that all of these parents whose kids have been affected by this have is that they care about their children, they love their children, they want to protect their children. Just in the small group that we have with SAGE, working on SAGE's law, we have Republicans, Democrats, progressives, libertarians, independents. We have it all. And that's because it doesn't matter where you're coming from, if you're trans or if you're not, those are your children, you care about them, you love them, and you need to be the one in charge. So I'm happy to provide to anyone more evidence, but those are a few of the basic things that need to be addressed. And I'll hand it back over to Elliot Roy.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thanks for all the hours and days and effort you've put into this. What comes to mind is a saying you hear often in the building is, don't fall in love with your bill. And you kind of understand what that means is that even good ideas don't always go forward. But I have fallen in love with the idea that when there is a chance to help someone, that sometimes this body will actually look at the content of a bill, the merit of a bill, the need for a bill in this case, and will do the right thing. I wish I could say that I'm confident that that will happen with this bill. But in this press conference that Laura referenced, the Equality Virginia, repeatedly we heard the phrase forced outing. If that's how they want to characterize it, they can. But what we're going to do with this bill in the next couple days is out the politicians who are unwilling to take a stand for children and with parents. It brings to mind the last election for governor. Parents started a movement. They would not be silenced. Their voices were heard, and they were heard in the election that led to Governor Youngkin moving into the governor's mansion. Parents led that movement. Another incident that comes to mind is very closely related to the bill that says, in the portion of the bill that says parents would not be guilty of abuse if they allow their kids, their girls to be girls and boys to be boys while they're minor children, is what Delegate Guzman has proposed a couple times now, which would go counter to that. It's at the opposite end of the extreme there. She would propose criminalizing allowing parents to make that decision with their children, to be boys if they're boys and girls if they're girls while they're minors. That's how extreme the opposition to this measure is. Now, interestingly enough, when that measure was brought forward most recently, the Democrats could not run from that quickly enough. This is their opportunity to put into law some protection for parents in that situation. I hope they will seize that opportunity. I believe the tide is turning. Whether it will turn quickly enough for the legislature to act on this bill, I don't know. But I think you can sense the resolve in this group that there is a strong desire to do the right thing and to continue to bring parents into this decision that's made between children, parents, and with the expert advice of those who can advise them appropriately. So again, I comfort myself, we put a lot of effort into this, and I comfort myself by saying that this is a win-win situation. If this bill goes forward, we win, we protect kids. If this bill fails, we will win, because I think this so clearly and so strongly communicates the need and the resolution to this situation that Democrats will be signing their own epitaph if they choose to act against this bill or to not support it. So that's part of the challenge. Do the right thing now, or deal with the parents in the next chapter of the parents' rights movement this coming November. And that concludes my remarks. Any questions from the members of the press?
You going to address the changes?
Thank you. And what press group are you with, sir? I thank you for the question regarding the changes. As with any bill, it moves through the process, and there's input. React to that input. In this case, the goal of the amendment that would be presented to the Senate that differs from how the bill voted out of the House was to draw a clear line as to what conversations could take place and what would trigger the reporting by the personnel of the school to the parents. We want to allow a quiet conversation that would not encourage a child or to move toward a gender transition, and that would not encourage a child to deceive their parents, but would allow for that conversation. That was very important to a number of the members. I think even Delegate Rome has communicated some level of agreement with this amendment, and hopefully this will provide a greater comfort level for the senators who we hope will be voting for this. Any other questions? Well, thank you for attending, and we will press on. Thanks again.